I must not do my Welsh accent either in today's recording.
You know you're going to.
No, I don't. I don't know that I am yet because I think I made such a hash of my Welsh accent the last time we recorded that I definitely don't.
Isn't that your accent?
No, it was when I tried to do the Welsh accent.
Jason's not going anywhere now, is he?
No, I'm here. I'm not going nowhere.
Don't tempt fate. You know what
I'm
he's
all
like.
sorted. I'm all
Oh,
sorted.
I just want a quick chocolate.
See, now that's the accent I can't do.
The Welsh one.
The Welsh one.
But literally, that's the accent you're doing.
No, it's not. I don't sound like that.
No, I don't.
Literally.
Hello, and welcome to Talking About. We are still talking about season 1. We're going to be talking about it for a long time to come. I am Paul or P-Bal. Don't forget you can like this. You can subscribe to it. I mean, they literally aren't in these corners, are they? But hey, like it, subscribe to it, write things below. Always like a comment. I'm joined as ever by...
Hello, it's James.
And hello, it's Jason.
Oh, Jason's bodying that elf thing, isn't he?
Rude.
Start glowing later.
I mean, you know, I don't look like Abraham Lincoln.
It's not Abraham Lincoln. I've come as Mr. Dickens.
Oh.
What?
Does he wear a bowler hat?
Well, no, but I would just.
Anyway, what?
Neat hair.
Nobody knows. Nobody knows. It's fine. It's fine. Nobody knows.
Joe Public will never notice.
Not a thing. I'm trying to think. There's some. Maybe it's a Peter Sellers disguise I'm thinking of. I don't know. Anyway. Last 2 times on Doctor Who in season 1, we scored Rose 20 points and End of the World 18 and a half.
Ooh.
So today we are looking at Doctor Who and the Unquiet Dead. I don't know what Jason's doing. He's having a right old fiddle and it's terribly distracting, even for a pro like myself.
I'm having lighting issues my side.
I think less is more, darling. Less is more.
No, you know
What?
I'm not saying anything.
What?
I am literally can't wait to get into the Unquiet Dead.
Oh, let's have an introduction, or is James doing this one? I don't know.
Well, no, I think I always like to think that when he's in the cosplay there, I think he can do this one.
Well, that's very generous of you. Thank you very much. Well, by way of introduction, I have simply put that we've gone from the far future in our last story to the distant past in this one, as the TARDIS crew find ghostly goings-on when they bump into Dickens. So we talked last time about how we'd had this sort of like big budget CGI, loads of aliens sort of, you know, Kickstarter, which was what was it, Jason? The second introduction, I think you called it. So here we are with the third introduction.
Well, it was indeed. It was the second episode. That's correct. Yes.
Where we this time are going back in time, and really sort of the first of the pseudo historicals. So we've gone back to Victorian times. Charles Dickens. He's towards, you know, sort of the end of his life. He's doing a show, and we have this lovely ghostly woman in the audience, and then we get kickstarted into an adventure in Cardiff.
Can I ask what's lovely about the lady in the audience at the theatre?
Look at her glow. She looks so healthy.
Well, what I will say about just briefly about the lady in the audience is she is yet another example of someone who got a Doctor Who action figure, and there has still, nearly 20 years on, not been a bloody Jackie Tyler action figure. What is wrong with them? We had Gelth old lady zombie figure, but there's like, oh no, we can't do a Jackie one because they're really girls things don't sell that well. It's like, all right, Okay.
Not
I
that
don't know
you're.
what's wrong with them.
Have they not done character options one of her yet?
No, there is no Jackie Tyler action. But what is wrong with the world? You could just use the rose mold and sort of age it or something. I mean, what's wrong with them? All I've ever wanted in life is a Jackie Tyler action figure. And we had her, we get bloody Richard Wilson later on, we get the Space Pig. All of these people get action figures for 3 minutes on the bloody screen, and we had not one Jackie Tyler action figure. I'm going to write to my local MP.
Wait for this. They're saving this up. And we're going to have a 3-pack of Jackie Tyler here somewhere, aren't we, in the future?
God, I would literally, I think that'd be the end of me.
There'll be Jackie Tyler in a dressing gown.
Jackie Tyler not in a dressing gown, even though it's the same mold with the dressing gown.
I'd want her with a washing machine and a pair of knickers to wave. I'd want that. That'd be like a special action set. Jackie, and with the digger with the JCB. Oh my!
Yeah.
We're getting ahead of ourselves. Here.
Jackie Tyler with a massive gun going, "Where the hell's my daughter?"
I know that there is a section of the Doctor Who audience that would love all that. They would love all that.
I hope someone's watching and making notes, because that's the campaign right there. Yes, so I think we were still talking about Charles Dickens.
So just to confirm then, James, it is the 3rd episode this time out then, isn't it?
It is. It's the 3rd episode, Jason. So,
and the very first episode to feature the Cardiff space-time rift. Amongst one of its first outings, I suppose, a little bit of a prelude to Torchwood. I like this one. It's a nice bit of a Christmassy bit of a feel to it with the snow, not unlike the snow we've just had. But I think that as part of what they're setting up here, I think this story works well from a point of view of establishing that sort of they've gone far into the future, they're coming back to the past. And it's got a bit of a spooky element to it with the dead walking and lots of lovely Welsh accents in this one, which I'm going
to do one, Jason. Go and do it.
No. No one's ready for me to do my Welsh accent. I can tell you that.
You've got a Welsh accent. What is this madness? It's like, I can't wait to hear someone do some kind of slightly fey English accent. I'd love to hear that. Where can I hear it? It's like literally.
But I don't hear the accent, you see, like you.
You don't hear it at all.
I don't know, because this is how I am. This is how I talk.
I know. So why do you keep saying you want to hear a Welsh accent?
And just to finish off my little bit of patter, it's Mark Gatiss' first outing on the new series as well.
Is that an opinion or just the title credits? I mean,
I'm warming into this. Come on, it's still early.
We're 3 episodes in. It doesn't take too much to work out that Mark didn't write either of the first 2. Maybe a more exciting twist on the fact would be that it's the first one Russell hasn't written.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe that's not a more exciting thing.
This is back when they had a showrunner that was, quite happy to let someone else do some writing.
But it is part of, as we were saying when we were all in a bit more sensible mood last time, it is part of the cleverness of having a contemporary, and we've been to the far future, now we've gone to the past. But we've gone to the past in a very, and this is not an unkind way of putting it, we've gone to the past in a kind of GCSE, we can recognise Victorian and we can recognise Charles Dickens, so it's history, but we're not asking you to recognise an obscure Egyptian ruler, and it's a very recognizable chocolate box kind of history.
Yeah, which is again, it's that step-by-step thing, isn't it? And you start to see Rose's understanding of time travel, because when they were in the far future, it was like events were happening and sort of swept up in all of that, and the Doctor saved the day. But when you go back to the past, there's that point later on in the episode where she realizes that the Doctor's seriously considering giving the dead bodies to the the Gelf, and she's like, no, you can't do that. It's like that's not what happened in history. And you start to see her developing her understanding of how delicate the past is, and testing that relationship between her and the Doctor as well.
But he says, because she says, oh, you can't do that. And he's like, well, it's not decent. You know, if you can save them, shut up. So there is a kind of, she hasn't brought her human morality to him quite yet. It's still very much Time Lord and Earth system.
Human, yeah.
I think it's slightly. I mean, Simon Callow he's a camp old thing as Charles Dickens, isn't he? But I think it is. Come on, he's a hammy old so and so, but we love him for it. I don't take anything from that. But I think the episode is, and back in the day, even pre or everything that happened afterwards, it was stolen by Eve. I mean, Eve is sensational, and I loved her in this, and it was that kind of magic when obviously they went, you know, she's tortured material, but you know what I mean. She is a star in this, I think.
Yeah, and I think, you know, particularly you see the sort of the scenes towards the end where, you know, she is literally she steps back into the arch and she has to sacrifice herself essentially. But you've got all that sort of, you know, I think her presence on screen, I agree with you. I think it's stand out. Although having said that, I have a lot of time for Simon Callow, in all honesty. You can't criticize him. He is, you know, wonderfully camp, but he brings a presence on screen that's much larger than life in most of the roles, and does so again with this. And you know, there's the bit where he's sort of, you know, he's on stage and he's giving that sort of reading from the Christmas Carol, and it's, you know, and you can see he's absolutely in his element throughout this story.
I didn't criticize him. I said he was a camp old ham. I didn't say it was a bad thing.
No, I know you didn't criticize him. I'm agreeing with you.
I think there were quite a few quotables from this one, and I think he's "Well, I have never heard the like" is a good one. I like that one.
I may use that.
To be honest with you, most of the time it's needed when I've had a conversation with you.
Yeah. Ooh. My favourite one is "What the Shakespeare," which I think is brilliant.
There are a few, and yeah, you have "What and you have the happy medium, don't you? I do love a happy medium.
I mean, we were talking about the humour in, you know, the previous ones, and I think in this, actually, this is probably one of the, sort of where the humour is best placed. Some of the quips that, particularly with Dickens and the Doctor, but even with Rose, like, you know, when she comes around, when she's in the funeral parlour, and she's like, you know, don't think I didn't notice you copping a feel or something like that. You know, there are these quips and one-liners that sort of come out, and I don't think it detracts from, you know, what's happening on the screen. I don't think it jars too much. I think it's quite cleverly interwoven.
I mean, Alan David's Welsh acting royalty, isn't he? He's and it's a lovely little character part for him as well, isn't it? I think there's bizarrely, I watched just one of the video diaries Mark did on the DVD extras, and it's quite a late addition. He says the joke about instead of being horrified that the body's reanimated, it's like, oh, we've got another one, kind of, because the joke of, you know, that they can't stop the dead bodies from coming to life, and it's quite it is a horrible thing. I mean, good grief, it's his grandmother, isn't it? That I mean, it's horrible as a concept, but if you underpin it with some dark humour, it sort of helps it along and puts it on a 7 o'clock at Saturday on BBC, I suppose.
Doesn't he say the stiffs are getting restless or something like that?
I think that was Jason. I think you're misquoting. Same accent.
I'm not mimicking it. I can't.
And it is quite, you know, when you take a step back from that humour, you know, you're quite right. You've got sort of the girl sort of in basically taking over the dead bodies. But then later on in the story, they're like, well, we want to create more vessels for ourselves. So they just start killing everybody off. It's quite a dark story in that respect, even despite the humor and despite the fact that you've got Callow, like you say, hamming it up and chewing the scenery in parts. There is a really dark side to this story, and you get, again, we've got this slow trickle effect of the time war and how it's impacted on people, and you have the Doctor really sort of wavering and saying, well, actually, what's wrong with it? It's like upcycling. These are dead bodies. There's nothing's going to happen. You can't use them anymore. Why not give it to this race of people that can survive in them? And again, there's a morality to that, which I think is really quite interesting.
Pity the girls. Pity them.
And I think setting it in the era that they've set this this story in as well, because there's something, about putting it in the past. I think that this story would have worked quite so well if it was a present day or future story, and because there is a sort of almost an innocence, because they're not expecting this to be something from aliens or something from outer space, and that, I suppose, in itself, particularly with the sort of Christmas setting, I think when you offset it against the darkness of the story, again, I just think makes this one work quite well.
I think a lot of it's bound up not just in, I suppose, the Mark and the liking the Charles Dickens Christmas Carol, that sort of thing. I think there's a lot of it in his love of the ghost story for Christmas. So I think it's probably stronger influences from that in a lot of ways. I mean, yes, there are a lot of the door knocker and all that. So there's lots of nods to it. I think it's sort of underpinned by that sort of and obviously still doing it to this day, isn't he now?
Yeah, absolutely.
They're all thinking about it now. They're all thinking.
I was going to go back to Eve Miles, because I think there's great scenes between her and Billy. But we get the bad wolf reference when she's doing the sort of reading her future, and she says the things you've seen, the big bad wolf. She talks about the darkness as well, which you can sort of rewrite into the end of season 4, where the sky, the stars are going out and the darkness they talk about there. I don't think that was foreshadowing that early on. But like you said, we do get the starts of the Torchwood, so the rift, and we're still continuing with the bad wolf echoes in each episode.
But it's nice though. It's a real slow burner. Whereas in future seasons, you're going to have it literally signposted really early on, and you're gonna have to watch every minute of every single episode to get the overall story arc is by the time you get to the end of it. This one's building really nice and slow, and we'll talk about it in the next story as well. But just a little subtle reference here, a little subtle reference there, and it doesn't spoil the enjoyment of the single installments, a bit like it did further on.
Wasn't that because it was, to an extent, that it was slightly retrogressively dropped in? I think it developed, and they suddenly thought, well, actually, we haven't mentioned it in this story. So I think things were dropped. So there are only slight references because it wasn't.
Because it was added. Yeah. It wasn't until future story where Russell decided that was going to be the theme, and like you say, they went back and added in references.
But later on, we do get the very clunky moment where they tell Gwen that she must be related to her. It's one of those things, isn't it? So you're like, oh, did you need to? Leave it to Big Finish. They'll do that. Don't do it on screen. It's fine. We're all right with that.
The Gwyneth timeline.
Yeah, it's interesting because I suppose does this one feel a little bit more self-contained than the other two to an extent? Does it feel a bit more standalone if you just watched it it's a bit more Doctor Who and his plucky assistant land and have an adventure.
Yeah, it's pretty much formulaic episode, isn't it? It's the TARDIS goes wrong. They land in the wrong place. As soon as they land, they hear someone scream, and then they're off onto the adventure. And yeah, it's not. I mean, but that's one of the reasons why I really like it, because it is a fun romp. It's not. There's nothing over, to overthink. It's just they turn up, they have this adventure, and then they go. And I think there's a really sort of poignant bit at the end where sort of Charles Dickens is sort of all reinvigorated and stuff, and Rose goes, oh, all the things he's going to go on to do, and the Doctor just says, well, actually he dies next year, and it doesn't really change his history. And I think that's quite a poignant thing to finish the episode on, but it is a standalone episode.
It's almost like an unofficial Christmas special, really. I know it wasn't, but it is a little bit like that, and you can watch it in a way, I suppose, because of its setting.
Yeah, you could. I mean, when did this one go out? It would have been. It came
April.
back.
April 2005 it went out.
So not really
sunny and warm.
Yeah, I mean, not absolutely. I agree. Not a Christmas special, but if you talk about the standalone nature of this one, it is a nice one. You could just literally pick it up, watch it. You don't have to really worry what's either side of it. But because of its setting, it is one of those that you would be more inclined, I think, to stick on at Christmas.
Yeah.
Or Canine and Company. Do you remember that one?
Oh no, let me think. I can't.
Let's not go there.
Actually, no, I'm not going there. No, you're right.
Is this the first reference as well to Rose's father? I think, do we get that in the psychic conversation? I think.
Yes.
No, I think Gwen. I'm calling her Gwen now. Eve. Anyway, what's she called?
Gwyneth.
Gwen. So she is Gwen.
Yeah, she's Gwen, but she's Gwen. Yeah.
Doubting myself now. I was doubting myself, Doctor. In it. Poor blimey, I'm from the estate, yeah, I think that might be the first mention of her father, unless I'm misremembering. It's been 8 weeks since I last watched it, Jason. So time stretches on with these things.
I'm sure it's not the only time you've watched it, though.
No, but I mean, unless I'm literally learning it word for word, like you can do with Day of the Daleks. You said you can do word for word?
That is one of my claims to fame, yes. I'm saying nothing.
Again, another pull-out quote from this is "For shame, Mr. Sneed," which we use quite a lot. For shame. For shame, Mr. Clifford.
Yes, I won't have heard that. I won't have heard that at all, will I, at any point?
I think Eros is one of the best directors of the new run. It's a shame he's not done much on the Who lately. I think he's just done, what's that thing with the gay kids? The Heartstopper? I think he's just been doing that. Yeah. But it's a shame he doesn't do more Doctor. He doesn't sort of go past Tennant, does he? I don't think he goes with Russell, and it's a shame. I think this and the last one better directed than maybe Keith's episodes. They seem a bit more cinematic in their approach. There's a bit more pace. I think I like them a bit better visually.
But I think in recording order, if I'm right, didn't this one was a little bit further on. It was one of the sort of possibly the second recording block because it wasn't done in the first one, and I think everything is settling in quite nicely at this point. Yeah,
this is the second block's and Unquiet, and then the first block was Rose and the next two.
The next two, yeah.
And I think the relationship with the Doctor is developing. When they're sort of behind the bars, and he says, I'm gonna die in a basement in Cardiff, but he says, I'm glad I'm with you. It's kind of like, okay. I think they've got a really good sort of chemistry, 3 stories in, it really does show. And I think the fact that Rose sort of goes off on her own for a bit and everything, I think that works really well.
But they are setting her up absolutely as the sort of the assistant that can go off and do that. I think, she's not going to just cling to the side of the Doctor and hope for the best. Billy is going to be action all the way, isn't she?
But it's Charles Dickens, isn't it, who comes up with the solution to the problem, isn't it? It's interesting because there's a lot more. I mean, the next one as well, where Rose helps with how do we deal with Monster of the Week or whatever. But this time, Doctor Who and Rose are locked in the thing, and it's Charles Dickens who works out how to fix the problem, doesn't he? Which is an interesting twist. Because ordinarily, if in a Doctor Who story the guest star works out how to save the day, it's usually a bit like Gwyneth in that they then have to die for it because they've worked out they've just got to kill themselves to save everyone. Whereas it is interesting that he's Charles Dickens that saves the day.
And you get that moment where he runs out, so you think he's chickened out and just left them to it, and then he realizes when he gets outside how to defeat them.
And I find it quite hard to believe that even after all the years of Classic Who, this is the first time that essentially Charles Dickens is being in a Doctor Who story. So if you think about the sort of touches points in and out of history all over the series, it's quite an obvious one really for Doctor Who to have covered already at this stage.
I suppose doesn't Doctor Who sort of lose its mojo or love of chasing historical figures after the first couple of years? I'm not saying it doesn't do it, but I mean I'm thinking Mark of the Rani is probably the last Mark of the Rani, the last proper historical celebrity that we get. I can't think. I mean, certainly 80s stories weren't going
there was
back in time anyway, particularly.
No, but you get that sort of mix, don't you, of Herbert in Time Lash, where you do get that sort of crossover, even though it's not a historical story. They're juggling with that sort of, they meet the author and I don't think you necessarily would have had to have placed Charles Dickens in a past story if you were to have come across him at some point in Classic Who. Oh no,
do we not have Charles Dickens in Time and the Rani? Is he one of the? We get Albert Einstein, don't we? I don't know whether what selection of geniuses and writers we get for that.
Oh, I'm about to get proven wrong. I'm sure James and his stats will be able to come up with this for us.
I have no idea off the top of my head.
I sort of, because Victoriana and stuff, because I mean, I think you obviously have Weng Chiang, but are there many other trips back to Victorian England in Doctor Who? It's too late at night for me to think hard.
When's the one in the lighthouse is set just at the turn of this century?
I think no, because is it not King Edward? They say because when he does the thing, I said, "Who is it?" And he's like, "It's King Edward."
Yeah, maybe it's based on a Victorian story, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think when Reuben does the thing, they do a joke about is the king, and I think that's. It must be a little bit after, not too far out.
Yeah,
but I think Victoria. Obviously, you instantly go if you're going Gothic. You instantly think of M.R. James, and you think of the Dickens. I think the Signalman and the ghost stories of Dickens. I think it's very evocative of that, and I suppose Doctor Who. I mean, we're not going to go down this alley road with this, but Talons Weng Chang obviously goes with the Victoriana of the sort of the Talons and the Fu Manchu sort of Victorian literary sort of vein, whereas this is the Gothic horror vein, and it's interesting because it's something you can mine quite easily, and they obviously are doing ghosts here, but they're not doing ghosts. They're doing that Barry Letts thing of we can do ghosts, but they've got to be scientific ghosts. You can't just have the
and period drama is what the BBC does best. So something set in the Victorian time. They've got the costumes. They've got they know how to do that kind of production, and it looks even now, sort of, many years later, it looks really, it's very visual. I think we were talking last time about all the CGI that they'd put into the previous one, whereas this, that you're not really that reliant on CGI until towards the end. It is a costume drama story, and from that perspective, it works really well.
I suppose because we obviously not Time in the Right, Mark of the Rani is Victorian, but Crimson Horror covers a similar sort of area, but it gives it the Gothic horror polish. So that, again, that's Mark going down the sort of Gothic horror Victoriana thing. I just, the era sort of lends itself better to that, and we did all love and admire Mark of the Rani. I'm sure we did. But it's interesting that you sort of associate it with the lamplight and the darkness and something a bit more spooky than bright sunny days, and you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. Yeah, because I don't think there's any point in this that's set in daytime. Is that?
Cardiff's quite bleak, and maybe that was daytime.
No, Cardiff isn't like that, really. It's nice. It's a nice place.
It's a nice place. I hope they put that on the tourist information sign. It's a nice place.
Brilliant.
So, do we have any exotic facts purloined from sources unknown?
There's a couple. There's several references to Dickens' stories. So there's a reference to Martin Chuzzlewit, Little Nell. So those, and again, you see that later on where we have other historicals, and they like to name check some of the work that's going on. According to Mark Gatiss, he claimed that the original version was darker than this, and there was supposed to be a sort of Pyramids of Mars type sort of flash forward to see what was the threat from the Gelth, but they scrapped that in the end. There was also a reference to the Doctor being able to change sex, and that was scrapped from the script as well. So yeah, that was. Oh, and originally it was called My Name's Dickens, Charles Dickens, and then they changed that to Unquiet Dead. That was my facts. Jason, is there any I missed off as you were ticking them away?
Well, there are a number, but obviously they didn't make the shortlist, so I'm quite happy for them not to be there.
Just for the benefit of the audience, he sat there going tick, tick, tick.
No, I'm not.
Oh dear, play nicely, children, play nicely. Yes, so I think we're probably cruising towards some kind of scoring. Would either of you like to summarize your thoughts on Doctor Who: The Unquiet Dead and give us a score out of 10, which we will combine together to make a total score, and then we'll see which our favourites from the season are.
I'm glad you've reminded me of the format there, because I wasn't.
Well, hang on, just stop. To use my Mariah Carey here, stop the song. Before we started with rules, someone, how are we doing this then? As if there was going to be some kind of reinvention of how to score out of 10.
It's 17 and a half.
Well, I'm certainly not scoring it 17 and a half. So we'll make a start on the scores then. And I don't mind going first for this one. So we've talked a little bit at length here about this one, but yeah, it continues to introduce the series back to a new audience, and that's a good thing. And I think that this is in its own place really quite a good solid sort of Doctor Who story. As you said, it's quite simple. It's a bit self-contained, but I think taking the references back to sort of Victorian in England, having Charles Dickens in it, laying the seeds for some of what will come in the future from a point of view of the sort of the time rift, the space-time rift over Cardiff, introducing the character of Gwen. it's quite a nice little self-contained bundle of goodness, I think, this story. It's a bit spooky. It's a bit spooky. It's a bit, the subject matter's not that great with the Walking Dead, but it's handled really well, and I think there's some good light and shade in this one. So I will be scoring The Unquiet Dead a very solid 7.
Ooh. Wow, there we go. I actually like this story. I think it's a fun story. It's got a great cast. It's, we talked about it being quite self-contained. I think it shows, having the show had steered away from historicals, and it kind of shows that historicals can be fun, and not pure historical like we've discussed in the sort of classic Who, but the sort of pseudo historical where there's a bit of a twist. I like gothic horror, so it sort of plays to that strength for me, and I think it's witty in places as well, and proper humor rather than sort of wheelie bins at burp. So for me, I scored it a very healthy 8.
Ooh. It's funny because I think you can also see. I love the pre-credits sequence and into that. But you can somehow see in a way that were this 1974 or something, that would have been the end of part 1. So Doctor Who and Rose would have taken all that time to sort of land and walk around Victorian England and meet a couple of local people in shops and stuff. And the cliffhanger would have been that in the street. Do you know what I mean? I think that's the great thing. When the pre-credits work, you can see that it's an old school episode 1 that's been sort of chopped down a bit. Maybe that's just me being a bit mean, but that's what I think. Okay. Yeah, I like it. I think it's probably better than the other 2 first episodes of the season. And now this is the 3rd first episode of the season.
You wouldn't say it's the pinnacle then yet.
I don't think it's the pinnacle. I don't know whether the 4th and 5th first episodes, which would also be the 4th first episodes because they're the 2 parts of the same episode, whether that will be a pinnacle of first episodes, but I don't think this is my pinnacle of first episodes.
You may notice I've not actually used the word pinnacle in this series so far.
You just said it.
And he keeps saying every week that he's not saying the word pinnacle. Literally saying the word pinnacle. It's amazing. Anyway, I mean, I hate to agree with Jason on anything, but yeah, I gave the Unquiet Dead a 7 as well. Which 7? Do you know what? I'm coming back to this thing. I think people are fixated in this day and age. I mean, maybe they're not, but I think in my world, when you watch like a Strictly, everyone has to have a 9 or a 10 or they boo. It's kind of like, babes, if someone's getting 5, it means they're halfway there. They're living on a prayer. They're all right. 5 is an average thing. I think if I start giving things 2s and 3s, then I know that that's not as good as it should be. But 7's an above average. Otherwise, where'd you go? What'd you do? How'd you do it? You have to wait for a televote and vote everyone off. Anyway, so that brings Doctor Who and The Unquiet Dead in on 22 points, which rumps it up to the top of the table. Ooh. Yeah. See, Jason, a kindred Unquiet Dead in Cardiff. It's topping the table.
I can't say anything.
But if the lamp starts flickering behind, we'll know that your gas supply is a bit.
If it is, I'm running for the front door, let me tell you.
I've seen you run. I know that's worth watching.
I mean, it is quite frightening because I actually am on more or less the time-space rift here in Cardiff.
You know it's fictional, though.
Yes. But,
I'm thinking of Father Ted. We might need the chart. Things that are real, things that aren't. We could start right. Time rift, not real. Pinnacle, not real.
Oh no, the pinnacles are real when they happen.
He's been to the doctor for his pinnacles. Anyway, we love you all, and thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
A pleasure as always.
Look at him fight to get the camera back there.
Yeah, I'm off of Valium, and so you can like this, subscribe to this, do all that sort of stuff. And we'll see you